Good afternoon, everybody. This is John, and welcome to our webinar today. And this is a very important one. This is on interviewing, and with all the work that I do with salons, and I look at some of the staff sometimes. It reminds me that we haven't had an interviewing webinar for a long time. Matter of fact, going back in my archives, I think it's been 3 years since we've done one, and I don't know why, but it just finally hit me in the head that we need to have one of these, particularly with the peak season that just not that many weeks away. So today I'm glad to have you all here. I think you all know who I am. I'm not sure who I am myself. I'm getting that old. I can't remember what I had for breakfast. But anyway, that's me. This is 26 years for me in the tan biz, and you can see some of the things that I'm involved with up there. And I'm really happy to have you all here today. We've got a nice sized crowd, and looks like some people want to learn something about interviewing. So moving on here, let's talk about the cost of some bad interviewing. And the question is bad hiring practices, are bad hiring practices expensive? And they really are. I mean, it's when you figure that there is a responsibility given to the managers. If you have a manager, if you're an owner and you have a manager that's running your store, there can be a very large cost for some bad hiring. And so let's look just as an example of what that kind of a bad cost can be. Try to move some things around on the screen here. Okay, so huge responsibility on each salon manager's shoulder. For example, let's get my PowerPoint working here. Okay, so for example of what a hiring manager spends if he or she hires the wrong employees. And it's really just a case of simple mathematics, assuming that you have 5 employees working in the salon, and of course if you have a chain, as most of our clients do, you have that many times this single example. So if you have 5 employees, and let's say you're paying them $8.50 an hour. I know some of you are paying minimum wage in that state, which is 7 1/4, and other states the minimum wage now is 9 1/4. Matter of fact, I think out in the Northwest it might even be going up more than that. But anyway, let's say it's $8.50, and those 5 employees work 20 hours per week. That's $850 a week times 52 weeks. That's over $44,000 annually. So that's a big expense that that manager is in control of. And so what I always try to tell people is that, look, you may not have managers making decisions on buying tanning beds, but it's a big expense that they control if they hire the wrong folks. So, you know, that's the message that we want to get across, is that the manager has a lot at stake here for keeping down the expense of bad hires. And plus, there's even a bigger cost of it, and that is the low-selling performer. And we've seen this spring and this summer with several clients when we look and took an analysis of their staff and looked at their numbers, what it's costing. And here's an example for you. Here's a single salon, and there was a little bit more than 20,000 tans, but I rounded off. So if there's 20,000 tans or visits coming through, and they're somewhere around 75 cents below the industry average of PSA. Now, the industry average, by the way, for the last peak season analysis that we did was about $1.53, and I think among our clients, Power Group clients, I believe it was $2.50 or it was about 75 cents difference. So if you look at 75 cents difference times 20,000 tans, that's a lot of money. You have to do a lot of tans to make up for that $15,000. So the conclusion is managers control a huge amount of company expense and possibly a huge amount of lost company revenues. So a good manager that knows how to hire and hire the right people can make a significant difference. You've heard this from me for a long time, for a lot of years. The manager is one of the most important people that you have in the salon, assuming that they get to do regular manager's duties. And today's webinar, by the way, is part 1 of this interviewing series. Part 2 will be on the 16th of November at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time again. And we had to break it up into two because this subject, there's so much to it that there's no way we could get it in. And I know normally we run over, and you people have been wonderful about letting us do that. But this one would go easily 2 hours, so we decided we're going to do it in two different sections. Originally, we wanted to schedule it for the 9th, which is only a week from today, but I've got some family. We're going to have some surgery here next week, so we had to postpone it. Anyway, so lots of responsibility on the manager's part, a lot of potential income, and so here's the question: is what should you be looking for in a salon superstar? So before you start going out there to interview, you have to ask the question, what is it that I'm looking for? And just a kind of a review of that sort of thing. And there's our superstar lady. I'm not sure if I think she should have done a little bit different cape color there, but it's okay. Maybe a brighter red. I don't know. Anyway, this gal is supposed to be a superstar, so we'll accept that she is. And some of the things that we want when we're out there looking, we're looking for somebody obviously that has good knowledge of salon lotions, services, current promotions, and prices. Now, that would be, of course, if they were already in the tanning business. If they're not in the tanning business, we would like to see somebody that has a fast learning curve that we can put in that will pick up on the lotion, services, and current promotions, because you can't sell anything if you don't understand what it's all about. So the next thing that we're looking for in a good salon superstar is good judgment, knowing how to handle customer service issues. If you put a rookie in there that's not worked retail before, and they have a customer that comes in that blows up, that rookie can lose their cool. So, you need somebody that has that good judgment working at retail. Okay, next, we want somebody that is flexible, trainable, able to accept redirection, and not afraid of failure. There's a lot of folks out there that are really difficult at times to redirect because they're just so afraid of any kind of what appears to be criticism, and that makes a very difficult situation to take somebody that's a good salesperson and make them into a superstar. So when you're hiring, you're doing your interviews, you're looking for somebody that not only either has good knowledge of the salon business, or you think can pick up on that knowledge quickly, somebody that has good judgment, but somebody that you believe is flexible and able to accept redirection. And those are the kinds of things that you find out in the questions that you ask. And in part 2 of this, on the 16th, we're going to go over questions, and you're going to see the kinds of questions that we ask to find out this information. Looking for somebody that shows initiative, somebody that we believe will help with suggestive selling, acknowledging customers that are waiting, jumps in to help during business crunches, will volunteer for additional work. So when you're in your interviews with them, you're talking about their past work experience, and you're trying to get examples of this. And we'll show you how we do probing questions in part 2 of this to get to that kind of information. And of course, we're looking for somebody that has maturity and life and career experiences. So instead of talking about age, I like to talk about maturity. Sometimes you'll see somebody that's 19 or 20 that has a lot of maturity for their age, but usually you put a few more years on and you'll find that it just grows almost exponentially from 19 or 20 up to 24 or 25. It just goes bananas in terms of maturity. And you think of yourself, what your own maturity was at 18 or 19 versus, say, 25 or 26. And my own experience was, mine was pretty dramatic. Again, we're looking for some other stuff, and that is a naturally engaging interpersonal skills. And I highly recommend, you've probably heard me say this before, this is a book I wish I would have written called First Break All the Rules. It's one of my favorite business books by the Gallup organization, and it'll talk about the concept of what is natural. And so you need to really, when you get a chance, take a look at that book. It's a great read. It's something, if you're an owner, you should read it and pass it to your managers, because it talks about having the natural abilities to do things. And what it means by natural is something that is an automatic actions and reactions to situations that happen. It's saying that, yes, Tiger Woods had some good training from his father and coaches for golf, but he also had in his DNA some abilities that were innate. And so we're looking for people that have an innate, engaging interpersonal skills. These are people that you don't have to teach them about natural warmth. They have it. And you're also looking for somebody that has kind of a selling ego, or what I call a swagger. You might want to call it a little bit of arrogance, but I don't see it that way. I see it just means that they have a lot of confidence. Just hired a lady, or we're about to hire a lady that I interviewed just a couple days ago that came across in this interview just having that kind of swagger. It's almost the give me the opportunity and I'll show you how good I am. Love to hear that in an interview, and that's basically what came across. You're also looking for somebody that has work experience in the retail indulgence industries. So somebody that's worked in spas, fitness, beauty, massage. Sit-down restaurants are good too, where they make a lot of their money by tips and by upselling. So, and I'm going to show you some of that in a application that I took here. I'm going to show you kind of the antithesis of that in a moment here. And then somebody that has a true passion for providing service to others. It's just kind of who I am. I love doing that. I love helping people, and I guess it just makes me kind of a crazy person that I actually enjoyed working in the retail industry behind the counter years ago. I suppose that you got to be a little crazy to do it, but I know I've met a lot of people in this industry that really love working for tanning. They could go work someplace else that would pay them more money, but they love providing that service. And I think it's really a great business that we're in, isn't it? I mean, we send people out the door smiling, and we help them with their self-esteem, help them feel better about themselves. So I think that's a passion that's nice to have for us to provide that service for them. I'm also looking for somebody that has roots in the community, somebody that's moved a lot over the prior years. Concerns me because they may not stay in that community very long. They may just be somebody that wants to see different parts of the country or the world. Doesn't mean that they're bad people, but I like hiring local folks more than I do people that have been doing a lot of moving. And also, when it gets down to it, you have to have employees that are compatible. It's as critical as competence, meaning it's good to have people that have great selling skills and have the competence to do the job, but if it's somebody that you feel will not be compatible with you or your staff, somebody that you think is going to be a troublemaker, that has such a strange side of that personality, maybe too much ego, maybe too much swagger, well, you have to consider that too, because you don't need World War III among your employees. So, and that brings down the question is, what does a superstar actually look like? And this is what I call, not that person there, by the way, but the superstar tanning employee demographic profile. All right, so we could get into a big debate on this. I can have many people tell me, oh, I hire 18 and 19-year-olds and they work out just fine. The way I look at it, it's similar to looking at a mortality table. When you look at a mortality table and you look at somebody like me that'll be 70 in February, I'm closer to the end of my life than probably most of the people in this industry. It's just the natural way of things. Now, I could live to be 110. I don't know that that's a possibility, but I did have one aunt that lived to be almost 102, and another one that lived to be almost 100. So I do have that kind of DNA in my family. So, who knows? Maybe I could, but the chances are most of you on this call are going to outlive me from this day forward. Well, that's what I look at in terms of a demographic profile. I look at what are the odds, And what our research as a company shows that the people we like to hire and we do the best are somewhere between 19 and 45 years old. Now, we put 19 in there because there was some great examples of some folks at 19. But if I'm going to be really honest with you, I would tell you I think my favorite person to hire is probably mid to late 20s to mid 30s, something like that, just because I like the maturity. You'll see a tremendous change in maturity. Again, by most of the numbers, by the time they go from 19 to 25, the maturity goes up pretty dramatically. And we see women, and again, we're talking about mostly women in this industry. You'll see women that have made such big changes by the time they get into their mid to late 20s. They've settled into something that they want to do, something they like to do. Maybe, just maybe, they have less boyfriend problems or husband problems. And of course, that's not always the case. But you're betting on the statistics that as they get older, they're more settled in. You want a woman, and again, most of them are female. We want somebody that wants the job, but also needs the job. And you just don't want to hire somebody that does this because they're looking for free tanning, or they've got nothing else to do, or they're looking for a place that they can camp in between tanners and be on Facebook. Those people are not doing you any good. And it seems like for the close to 700 secret shops that we've done over the last 4.5, 5 years, whatever, it seems like we run into more of that sitting on a stool or a chair behind the counter, putting people in beds, and within 30 seconds of them walking in the door, not doing any selling, but on Facebook or with their friends or whatever. We look at not only the secret shop reports, but we look at the cameras, which always blows my mind, by the way, that why a person that's working in a tanning salon has their friends come in. We just last week we had, with a chain I'm working with, we had a gal working in a store where she had friends come in. One of the friends was behind the counter with her, which is an absolute no-no for a variety of reasons. Not only just for lotions, but also for cash and the till. And I mean, I can't, insurance reasons. There's just so many, can't even go through them, But she knows that camera is on, and you've got to think that she would know that eventually someone's going to see that she's screwing off, whatever you're going to call it. I don't get it. I don't know why. Maybe they think that no one's looking at the camera video footage, but it's crazy. Anyway, I want somebody that wants the job. They really want this job. And boy, the ones that I really like working with are the ones that they know they could go someplace else and make more money, but they really want this job because they love being in the tanning business. And also, to some degree, they need the job too. Sometimes you get them into their mid to late 20s. Maybe they're a mom, they've got a child. Maybe they're not getting the support from the father who's maybe they're divorced from, and they really need that job. So it's nice to have that. I don't want to hire anybody that looks at working in a tanning salon as a hobby. It just doesn't make it. I want engagement, and I want commitment. Okay, also, I want somebody that understands selling and the upselling of indulgent service and products. And that's why I talked about in the past couple slides that I like people with experience that work at, say, a massage chain or high-end beauty salon, a spa, a fitness center, or, of course, work at other tanning salons. Now, some people don't like to hire folks that worked at other tanning salons because they feel that maybe they have bad habits. Well, I guess my way of looking at it is there's probably more good there than there is bad. If they understand tanning, and you should know that in the interview, they should know something about upselling and certainly EFTs and lotions and that kind of thing. If they have bad habits, and that comes down to a management move, you just have to be a good manager at redirecting them. So I wouldn't necessarily throw them out. I've worked with a lot of tanning people that worked at tanning salons other than the client that I was working with, and we've done very well with them. So Don't necessarily think that if you hire somebody or somebody comes in from your competition that they in fact might not be a good employee. Also, I like a track record of responsible employment, and I'm going to show you an application here in a little bit. I see so many of these, and yeah, what I don't understand is why, and maybe they do in some high schools, I don't know. I don't understand why these young folks coming out of high school, maybe they're a first-year college person, I don't know, why they've not been schooled in how to write a proper resume and what to do with it. This resume I'm going to show you today, this application, was done on an iPhone, which to me, when people do resumes and applications on cell phones, to me it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. It just drives me crazy because it just somehow shows a lack of real commitment. Remember, I said up above, I want somebody that wants the job. And somebody that wants the job will really put some commitment into putting that application or that resume together. So just hold on here, and I'm going to show you one that maybe you can get a good chuckle over. But I like a track record of responsible employment. I don't want to see somebody that had a job here for 2 months, a job there for 3 months, 2 months, 4 months, 3 months. To me, that's not responsible. That's just job hopping. And I have to tell you that my oldest son, when he was in that entry-level age group, I think he was 17 at the time, he had 6 jobs in 5 months. And he got fired from every one of those jobs because he couldn't get out of bed in the morning. I've called him my Rip Van Winkle son. And, it's funny, I went and I talked to every one of his bosses. I called them after he lost his job, and they said the same thing. Nice kid, great, you do a good job when he's here, but he's always late because he's always sleeping past his shift time. And, of course, when I talked to my son about it, it was always the employer's fault. It was never his. But maybe that sounds familiar. But anyway, responsible employment. There should be a track record of it. And then I'm looking for, of course, you can't, and we're going to go over this in some of the questions and stuff you can ask, but I'm looking for somebody that has a stabilized personal life. I don't care if they're single or married. I just, somewhere in that conversation, I want to see somebody that I think is not a flake, somebody that's kind of got their act together. And so you can vet them somewhat on LinkedIn or Facebook or other social media. We're about to offer a position to a lady on Friday as a manager candidate at a chain. And we looked at her on Facebook, and she looked really good. Not only was her interviews really good, the phone interview I did with her was very good, but the interview my client's people did with her was very good. But we also saw her on Facebook, and she looks pretty impressive. So we're excited about having her join us. But this is the kind of research that you have to do when you looked at before, the kind of money that can be spent on bad hires, not only in the payroll you're paying them, but also in the sales they're not making. It's something to think about. Okay, so, but before you go shopping for new talent, you got to know what it is that you have to offer the candidate. So when you get into that job interview, remember this, and I want to really press this on everybody here. When you sit in an interview, there's more than one person making a decision. There's 2 people making a decision. You're making a decision, and that applicant's making a decision. Now, if you're an old fart like me, and you go back to when I was 16 years old, which seems like back in the covered wagon days, but there weren't a lot of jobs available. So, I mean, I took the first bag boy job I could get at 75 cents an hour. Anyway, yes, and I know I had to walk through 3 feet of snow. You've probably heard these stories, but of course I grew up in Minnesota, so it probably was 3 feet of snow. But anyway, today, these kids, if you want to call them that, or the millennials, they have a lot of options of where they can work. And so you have to be the employer of choice. If you want to write something down, write down employer of choice. And so to do that, you've got to be prepared when you go in. When you feel you've gotten to the point where this person is somebody that you want to go after, you better know what it is that you have to offer that candidate so you can get the best. I got to share a personal story here with you. Many years ago, I was working for CBS. I was working for CBS Records in the music industry for a number of years, and I got recruited to go run the entertainment division of a little company called Target Stores. And I'm sitting there after I took the job. I'm sitting there with the president of Target, where we had opened up a new division, and I had to hire, when it was all said and done, about 150 people. And so he asked me what my goals were and what I was looking for. And I said, well, we could go out there in the record industry and we can hire some good people. And he stopped me right there in my tracks and he said, some good people. He said, I don't want you to hire good people. I want you to hire the best. And that kind of stuck with me over all the years, is that I think sometimes, not sometimes, let's face it, people, in the tanning biz, a lot of times we settle. We take a live body that walks in the door. We want to make sure the heart's beating first. That's good. We don't want to put a cadaver behind the counter. But we settle, and we don't take the best. And so to get the best, sometimes you're going to have to do some things. You can't just treat them like disposable products. You don't treat the tanning beds or the spray booths that you invest in as something that you can do as cheap as you can. You want to get something that's got all the bells and whistles. Well, you need the best bells and whistles from the candidates. And to start with, if you're offering minimum wage, then don't complain to me about the people that you hire and that they're not committed. Because think about this before. Before I said you want people that have a selling ego and kind of a swagger to them. Now, I don't know anybody. I've never met anybody. And just, by the way, just so you know, I figured out the other day that over my career, I've interviewed more than 2,000 people. And I've never interviewed anybody that had a swagger or an ego about themselves that they could really sell, ice to Eskimos. I've never had anybody that would do it for minimum wage. And if you're lucky enough, because I've had clients say to me, oh, no, we hire at minimum wage, and look at Lisa. Boy, Lisa's really good, and then we hired Megan, and she was really good. But then you find out that these gals didn't stay around very long, because once they realize they're good at what they're doing, why should they work for minimum wage? Unless, of course, they love tanning so much that they will work for minimum wage and maybe the commissions or bonuses they make. But still, there is a stigma among millennial employees about minimum wage. They don't want to go to work for minimum wage, whether it's their own self-pride or it's peers talking to them about working for minimum wage. To a millennial employee, and I think even people outside of the millennial ages, the thought of working for minimum wage is, well, I could get that by going to the drive-up window at Wendy's, and who wants to work there? Well, I can't argue with them on that. I'd much rather work at a tanning salon than I would at Wendy's. So, hey, it's a cheap investment. If you're talking about a part-time employee that's working 20 hours a week and you want them to have a PSA in the $8 or $8.50 or $9 range, you're not going to get that person at minimum wage. And by the way, if somebody will come to work for you at minimum wage, what does that tell you about their own self-esteem? I mean, it tells me it sucks. So, I mean, I wouldn't want to hire them. So that's one thing, and I know there's people on here that would argue with me. They'd say, well, I need to control cost. No, let me correct everybody on this call right now. You don't need to put your attention on controlling cost. You need to put your attention on the control of that top line revenue. If you get that control and you keep increasing that, and you increase the amount of money per tanner that spends in your salon, then everything else falls into place. And what you're going to find is your revenues go up, your cost of payroll as a percent of your gross will continue to go down. And I've seen it time and time again. I'll see where people will say, oh gosh, I saved $50 in wages, but gee, my PSA is down $1 over all my transactions. Well, it's costing you a lot of money to put people in salons that don't give a rip about your business. So enough of it said about minimum wage. You want to create what I call a non-ceiling, or a perception of a non-ceiling sales rewards and commission program to augment per hour wages. What that means is that you want your employees that you're about to offer a job to have the perception that there's no ceiling. There's no ceiling to how much I can make. If I keep selling all of these EFT packages and I keep getting paid $8 or $10 every time I sell an EFT, man, I'm going to sell a crap house full of them because that's going to be a big check for me. And I've seen some people, particularly over the last 3 years that we've been changing clients' approaches to EFTs, I've seen some young and older employees make some huge dollars. Now, if they're making huge dollars, it's also because the owner has made some huge dollars. So you want to have a sales reward and commission program, so because you get in that interview and you say, okay, we offer $8.50 an hour, and or okay, we'll stay 8 1/4, because let's say it's 7 1/4 minimum wage the state you're in. We offer 8 1/4 to start with, but you can make over $11 an hour by selling lotions for lotion commissions and EFTs, or you can make more than that. Just depends on how much selling you do. It is absolutely amazing. We've got some research going on now we're about to release to the industry of how small a percentage of tanning visits that come into a salon that actually end up being a sale where money is collected. Now, I realize that as EFTs go up, we have EFT visits coming in where people already own an EFT and they're not going to buy some more tanning services. But when we really drill deep into the research, we find that not a lot of commissions are being sold, not a lot of lotions are being sold. So there's a huge way that we can grow. All you got to do is look at the per customer average, and per customer averages can be so much higher in this industry. Okay, so a practice. These are the things that you want to have handy, so when you're talking to your client or to your candidate, a practice of formal and informal performance feedback. Millennials have been telling us now for years, one of the things they want to hear is, how am I doing? Remember, in many ways, these are the trophy kids. They went to a soccer game, they played all of 3 minutes, but they got a trophy for showing up. Whether or not we agree with that or don't agree with that approach to rewards, they got it. They need performance feedback. Look at, they play computers, they zap 100,000 zombies, the score keeps going up, they love it, they're getting feedback. So if you're not doing some kind of formal or informal performance feedback, and the last 5 chains up into this one just recently we started with, they've not been doing performance reviews, and I strongly recommend that. I suggest you do it twice a year. One at the end of peak season, and one either starting over. One would be right before peak season starts, and one right after peak season ends. And tell employees how they're doing. That's on a formal basis. But remember, a formal performance review should, if you've been on my webinars before, should only be a reaffirmation of what the employee already knows. Excuse me. You should be giving them those bits. And if you were on the last webinar we had, which was last week, we talked about the MVP, where managers are collecting information to give to their owners and to show their employees who's the most valuable player. And if you haven't seen that, you really should go. It's in, if you're a Vault member, it's in the Vault. If you're a subscriber to our digital magazine, Sunbiz Weekly, you can go on there and you can play that MVP, the one that was just, the webinar was just done last week, and it'll give you information about that. But people need feedback. Also, establish a position hierarchy. This is something that really helps. These millennials, they want to have the ability to grow their career, and some people would scoff at that and say, career in the tanning industry? Yes, because we should be professionals. The people that work in the counter, we should all be professionals. And a professional is going to want to see that they're going to grow. So if you haven't put together titles where people can grow, and that's a whole different webinar, which we've done, I think it was last month we did one showing the career pathing. Actually, I think we might even talked about it in the one last week too. So you've got to make sure that you've got that, because that's what millennials want to hear. And providing transparency concerning the company's strategy and aspirations. When you get into an interview and these employees want to know where you're going with this tanning salon. And, you know, I talk to owners. Every once in a while I'll have an owner say, well, I don't really want to tell them too many things. Well, I don't know why. You know, you want them to be an emotional partner with you in what your goals are. So be transparent. I mean, there's so many owners that'll say, well, I don't want to share numbers. And, you know, you think your competition doesn't know what your number. I could, anyone on this call, with just maybe a couple trips to your salon, either watching your salon or being out in the parking lot between 4 and 7 on a Monday night, you let me do that twice, I could pretty much figure out what your revenues are going to be for the year. There's just, it's easy enough to do. So, I mean, there's not a lot of secrets in it. So transparency. Let these new prospective employees know what your goals are. That, well, I've got one salon, but I'm looking to open a second one now, or we've got 19 salons, and we're going to grow the other side of this market. We're probably going to open up 6 more, and there's room for whatever. Just so they know that it's not a dead-end job where some people will think they're just sitting behind a counter. And you know, it's these millennials get a lot of pressure from their parents, and I'm sure a lot of parents think that working in a tanning salon is ridiculous. You know, there are people older, you know, my age group or even younger, that think that tanning is just not a place where professionals work, and nothing could be farther from the truth. So, and then the other thing is recruit all the time. I love it when, and it's being sarcastic, I know, when someone will say to me, well, we've got full staff now. We're ready for peak season. And I want to get an air sick bag because you know, there's so much turnover, just for whatever the reasons are. You should recruit all the time. Social media, email, Facebook. Some of the best is email. You send out a recruitment poster or a recruitment email to your customer base. I mean, the good thing about it is, you know, A, they probably like your salon. That's why they're a customer there. B, they like to tan. Those are 2 good things to start with. And if you know who they are, at least you have maybe some idea about their personality. And don't worry about not hiring somebody that is a customer of yours. If you think after you interview them that they're not a good fit, don't worry about not hiring them. I know that you're going to say, well, they're a good customer. Gee, they spent $150 last year. You hire somebody that's not a good hire, they're going to cost you a whole lot more than $150. So you got to get past that part. Okay, so how can I be better prepared for interviews? And this is, again, as we're moving in here, you know, get part 1 of this done. How do I get better prepared for interviews? Because, frankly, too much management time is spent on wasted interviews. Now I'm going to show you an example. And what I had to do is I had to take the name of the person out. I had to take a lot of the particulars. I had to change the names of the former employers because, you know, I don't want to embarrass anybody, that kind of thing. And the only person that would know that this was their resume is if they happen to be on this webinar, and I'm not even sure then that they would know. So I think what I've got here is here's an example, I would say, of what we call of no way. When I say by no way is I take applications and resumes I get from my clients, I separate them into 3 piles. I separate them into, wow, this little pile, these people really look good and I want to interview them, with a screening call to start with. Or there's a second pile that might be some possibilities. And then there's what I call the no way pile. So I'm going to show you a no way pile here. And this gal, she started off by saying what her skills were. Well, Microsoft program experience, took classes. You know, the ability to use the English language just astounds me sometimes. Anyway, so this is her skills. And they are what they are, whatever what she's stating. Now here's her employment history, and you're going to love some of this stuff. From July of 2012 to 10 of 2012, she worked for, and this was not the real name, but XYZ Realty Solutions. It's a real estate company. She worked there for 3 months. Okay. Then this shows what some of the things that she did. She was an executive personal assistant. Now, when I see somebody say that kind of thing, I think, and you worked there for 3 months. Well, let's see if the rest of your resume supports the fact that you should have been an executive personal assistant. Now, I have a real problem with, again, as I said before, applications or resumes being done on a cell phone. I suppose a great job can be done on a cell phone if somebody applies themselves, but is there anything wrong with at least requiring that they sat down at their computer and put some work, some thought into it? How about spell check? Now, QuickBooks, it should be a capital Q. All right, John, you're being kind of picky there. How about property preservation pictures? Preservation? What is that, like reservations to a prison? Hey, preservations. There you go. So someone's going to get off to prison and they don't want to go right away, so they make a preservation. Okay, from May of 2012 to June of 2012, they worked for Randy's Heating and Cooling, and for 1 month. Okay. And by the way, I have to tell you this. This person responded to an ad on Craigslist. And the ad that we put on Craigslist was for that we were hiring MIT candidates. MIT meaning manager in training. And I strongly recommend that you go about it that way because it's an in-between position. You're kind of starting them in the stores to learn the system, the POS, and it gives you a chance to observe them before you throw them into the deep end of the pool as a quote-unquote manager. But again, spell check. What is a skidoolie? See, skidoolie appointments. So apparently she worked for Randy's Heating and Cooling and she did skidoolie appointments. I'm sure that's supposed to be scheduled, but I love skidoolie. Maybe it's a new shortcut. I don't know. Now, February 2012, she worked for the Lutheran Home Healthcare, and she's worked there for 4 years and 8 months. Now, I congratulate her for having a job that's been there that long. But I should tell you that in this Craigslist ad, we specifically put in there that we wanted at least 2 years of retail management experience, particularly in the indulgence, or preferably in the indulgence industry. So you keep watching this as we go on, and you tell me if there's some indulgence here. Now, I think it's wonderful that she worked at a healthcare, and she has the empathy and can work with folks like that, the emotionally ill or injured. I give her, great kudos for that. I don't criticize her for that, but that's not exactly preparation to work in a tanning salon, especially if you don't have hygiene. Helps with hygiene. Maybe that's she was thinking of somebody as he or she was walking by. I don't know. Here's the rest of it. July of 2011 to November, she worked at Tim Hortons, which is a family restaurant. She worked there for 4 months. Look at again what she did: cashier, cleaning, preparation of drinks. And then she worked at Subway. She was a sandwich artist for 5 months. But you see, as we're going on, there's no experience in management. And I swear to God, I think people have probably ran into this. You put out an ad, and I swear they can't read, because there's literally nothing about this girl's resume that has anything to do with the ad that we had on Craigslist. She also, in her education, she went to Wilson Academy High School. If you look at the dates there, 9 of 2008 to March of 2011. If I do the math on that, I think that's 2.5 years, unless I'm real tired today, but it seems 2.5 years. Now, normally high schools today are 9th through 12th grade. When I was, 100 years ago, when I was in high school, it was 10th through 12th grade. But today they have middle school, which is 6th through 8th, and high school is 9th through 12th grade. So she was in there for 2.5 years. If you were going to interview this person, which the next webinar we're going to talk about probing questions, there's one you'd want to ask is that, how long were you in high school, I guess? How did you get out so early? And she says that she's at Macomb Community College from August of 2011 to present. Well, this is now November of 2016. She's in a community college, which is normally a 2-year college, and she's been there for 5 years. But again, it gives you those ideas that about what to ask, the questions, if you were going to interview her at all, and I wouldn't. There's no applicable retail experience. With one exception, she has worked 5 different jobs, an average of 3 months each, no management background of any kind, no selling, no upselling. And those are some of the frustrations, and sometimes you see people that will go ahead and hire somebody like this just because they need a body. Okay, now, pre-screening questions and considerations. Again, what I do, I've got 3 piles. The no way pile, the maybe, and then I've got the sure thing. And I'm sure you can bet which pile is the smallest pile. It's the ones that I'm the most excited about. But pre-screening, you want to do pre-screening because pre-screening saves you a lot of time. So some of the things when I'm talking to them on the phone, I'm asking, where do you work now and why are you looking to change? Just kind of obvious. I'm asking this on the phone because before you spend a lot of your time in a face-to-face interview, why not go over a couple of these things on the phone and decide right then and there if you're going to set up an interview. Be wary of too many job changes or large employment gaps. And I showed you one right now that had a lot of job changes. And sometimes there might be a good reason for employment gap. I interviewed somebody a couple of months ago, a young lady, and very impressive, but there was a big employment gap, and it was because she was deployed to the Mideast. She was in the Army. So I was very proud of her and told her so. You're looking for personal compatibility, matches, mismatches. You know, if you don't feel in this screening call that there is that warmth or that energy, then, you know, why go on with it? You've got to feel that somebody really wants this job. If you don't hear that enthusiasm over it, you know, if the first thing they ask is, you know, I need to not work shifts Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoons, and I'm only available every other Saturday. You know, and that's one of the things we talk about too is the work availability. Experience, at least 2 years of retail service experience. People will say to me, well, if we don't give them some experience, who's going to give them some experience? Well, you know what? We are not, when it comes to this kind of a thing, we're not our brother's keeper here. I mean, you know, if you want to be their teacher, go ahead. I don't like to hire rookies because you get into retail service and some customer is upset, and sometimes a rookie can go to pieces over somebody moaning about, you know, what's going on in the tanning salon. You got to get somebody that's been around for a while. Also, another, and this is of course one of the more obvious ones as far as pre-screening, is wage expectations and available hours and shifts. Now we all know on the available hours and shifts, they can tell you, oh, I'm available anytime, and then you get them in for a face-to-face interview and you're hearing something different. If you hear something different in the actual face-to-face interview than what you heard in the screening, be very, very careful of hiring that person because they're making up the rules as they go. Wage expectations. If somebody says to you, well, I'm looking for a job where I can make $15 or $16 an hour. Well, that's fantastic. Good for you. We don't pay that here at XYZ Tanning. With and bonuses, you can make some good money, but I certainly couldn't tell you can make up to $16 or $17 an hour. Those are the kind of things that screen folks out. Doesn't mean they're bad. It's not going to work. And of course, I like to vet people on Facebook. We had one a few months ago. Lady looked like she'd be pretty impressive, and then we saw the pictures from her birthday party where she was at a bar, passed out. It was really quite funny. Okay, so when you're doing this pre-screening and whatever, and you eventually get into interviewing, what is the goal? What's real? That's what you want to find out. Is the most important goal of interviewing is discovering the real person sitting in front of you. I'm not going to go into questions on this section. 2 weeks from today, I'm going to go specifically through questions and how to do probing questions and that kind of thing. But what will help you see the real person when you get down to interviewing? Well, you want to set up a relaxed interviewing environment. And this is important because, again, they have to make a decision, so do you. And you don't want people to feel intimidated. There is this strange kind of mentality out there among a few people in the tanning industry that say, no, I want to see how good they are under pressure. That's such a ridiculous assumption. You want people to show you who they really are. You want their defenses totally relaxed. So you set up a relaxing interviewing environment, non-authoritarian seating, meaning you don't sit behind a 12-foot-long desk and have them sit in a chair that has no springs in it so they sink down so you can speak to them like God. Typically what I do is I like to interview people. Sometimes I interview them in a coffee shop. If I have to interview them at the salon in person, I'll interview them almost sitting around the side of a desk as opposed to having the desk in between us. I want them to feel of us as like we're equals. And the first thing I always say to them is, thank you for coming into today, and let's talk about yourself and talk about the job. And then I offer a refreshment. And this is kind of a little known secret. This really, really works. You're trying to develop commonality between yourself and this person. You want this person to look at you as themselves, that you're just like them, and you're not a judge wearing a black robe that's going to make a decision to reject them necessarily. And so you're looking for something in their background that may be parallel to your background. Maybe they stayed at a high school they went to. Maybe they stated on their resume or their application that I have no children, but I have 3 dogs. Well, legally we're not supposed to talk about children, but there's nothing that says that we can't ask them about their dogs. And if you have dogs and you love dogs, my wife and I, we love our critters. I'm looking at 2 very large golden retrievers who are waiting for me to get off the phone to take them for another one of their 52 walks today. But anyway, and what you're trying to do is develop that commonality, and so you start talking about their dogs, your dogs. This is that small talk that starts before you really get into the meat of who they are. They start to feel comfortable. The more people feel comfortable with you, the more they'll tell you. I've had people in interviews tell me stuff that was so personal, I almost wanted to reach across and grab their hand gently and say, please don't don't tell me anything more about your personal life. I don't want to hear. A lady told me once about the affair she was having with her ex-boss, and no, la, 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 I don't want to hear that, no. So now I say offer a refreshment. I go into an interview face-to-face with 2 bottles of cold water, and I'll say, would you like a bottle of water? Most people will say no. I'll open my bottle of water, and I'll start drinking the water. They see me do it, I'll pass that bottle over to them, and eventually, I'll tell you 9 times out of 10, they'll open that bottle of water and they'll start drinking. Now, why do I do that? We're both doing the same thing. Now we have something in common. That's what you want. You want them to look at you as a real person. You interview in private, and I do a little thespian move here. If I'm out in the field working with salons and I'm going to do an interview for a salon manager or district or general manager, whatever, I'll stick my head out the door of the office as I'm talking to somebody up at the front counter, and I'll say, Megan, please hold my calls, will you? Now, it's really just acting because my calls would come into my cell phone. I get into the back of the room where the candidate is, and I intentionally turn off the cell phone in front of them. And it's because I want that person to know that this is an important session for me. We're in private. No one's going to hear this but the 2 of us, and that I'm respecting their time. And it works because then it sends the message that this is an important decision that you're making, and it's an important decision they're making. Be prepared with open-ended questions, and I'm going to give you, 2 weeks from now, I'm going to give you a whole garbage load of open-ended questions. If you're a Vault member, we've got a bunch of interview questions in the Vault. Open-ended questions are the ones that can't be answered with yes or no. And one of my favorite ones, sarcastically, as a definition of yes or no, I like when people will say, do you like working with people? Now, can you imagine someone saying, are you kidding me? People suck. I don't like working with them. No, absolutely not. I'll just ring up the cash register with, no. So those are the kinds of answers that you're not going to get. If you ask somebody, do you like working with people? They're going to say, oh, but of course, yes, I love working with people. Those are what we call close-ended questions. The open-ended questions are questions like, tell me about the best boss you worked for and why you felt they were your best boss. That's one of the questions we'll talk about 2 weeks from today. And then be prepared to use additional probing questions. So I just said, tell me about the best boss you ever worked for. Oh, it was Bob. Bob was really great. Oh, well, can you give me some examples of why Bob was so good, why you liked working for him? That's the kind of probing questions that you get into. Okay, so then we've got interview approaches that don't work. And if somebody tells you, well, we use the tribunal. We have somebody come in and interview, and we have an owner, the owner's wife, and the salon manager. No, tribunals don't work. Again, you're trying to get people to relax, and having a single person sit in front of three, it's like a judgment at Nuremberg. No, it doesn't work. You're not going to get people to feel comfortable about what they're telling you. And Jeopardy, I've seen people use Jeopardy where they have 3 or 4 interviewees, and it's like they have these interviewees competing with each other. That's not good. All that gets is somebody that's better at schmoozing, or that's on the spot. They might be a con man as far as that just doesn't work. And the sell me. This one really bugs me. I've heard people do this. They'll pick up a bottle of lotion to somebody that's not worked in a tanning salon before. They'll hand it to them during the interview, and they'll say, okay, right on the spot, no, warning. See this bottle of lotion? Show me that you could sell it to me. What the heck is that? Look at one of the things that we have to do is, if we can get people that have that natural warmth, is we got to train them, because how you sell in the tanning industry is certainly different than how you sell a used car. So that's just, it doesn't put people in a relaxed where they can tell you anything about them. You're trying to find out who the real person is, what their values are, not whether or not they can react right on the spot, because you can't expect somebody walking through the door that's not worked in tanning before to be really great at selling lotions. They got to be trained. And then the other thing is, you sell a job before you're sold. That's a mistake that folks make sometimes. You're sitting with somebody, for whatever the reason is, they like their personality, and after the first 5 minutes, they start selling the job. I wouldn't sell the job until you're sold on that person. And lastly, you don't do at-the-counter interviews. Interviews absolutely should be private. But I see people do it. They'll have a 15-minute interview at the counter. They want to determine if their heart is beating and if they can work tonight, and then they get hired. All right, the next thing I'm going to want to get to is the legal guide to what you can ask in an interview. We'll hit this a little bit more 2 weeks from now. And if you're ever wondering about what you can ask, and I know you probably are, because I have people ask me that all the time, can I ask this question, can I ask that question? One of the books I wrote was the Burning Issues of Employment Law, and if you're a Vault member, it's free. You can download it inside the Vault. And the real test of it is, does the question I'm about to ask pertain to the applicant's capabilities to perform the core job duties? So one of the illegal things that you can't, or some of the illegal things that you can't ask, and it's called the standard of appropriateness, by the way. So some of the things that you can't ask, if you want to avoid violating the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and other legal potholes, is you can't talk about age or sex. By the way, I had somebody say, are you saying you can't ask if they have sex? Obviously, we're talking about gender there, but I know it's happened where they've asked about their personal life. You can't ask about their religion, their color, their nationality, their family planning. If somebody comes, I sat a couple of years ago, I sat with an owner who was doing an interview on a couple of candidates for district manager, and he was really happy with this one candidate, and he said, now, you're not planning to have a bunch of children now and put us in a position where we have nobody to run the district. Um, I I was looking for a baseball bat to hit him because that's highly, highly illegal. Can't talk about the marital status, country of origin, blah, blah, blah. Again, look at all that stuff there on the screen. Do any of those questions or subjects have anything to do with the applicant's capabilities to perform the core job duties? And it doesn't. We'll talk about disabilities or perceived disabilities a little bit more 2 weeks from now. Subjects that you can ask is you can ask about their education, their work experiences, positions held, relationships with current or past employers or peer employees. You can ask all that stuff. Career plans, any reason they cannot perform the basic requirements, the applicant's current work and other activities. You can ask them about their other activity scheduling. Now, if they get into talking about how they're a deacon at their church, cool. I would not pursue that conversation. I'd kind of leave that alone because it might cross the line of religion. Obviously, the wages they're seeking. You should ask for references. Now, I don't mean personal references. If somebody gives you personal references, well, here's a personal reference is my minister or my rabbi or my uncle or my brother Larry, whatever. Those don't mean anything. You don't want them. You want work references, ex-bosses, maybe other employees that they worked with, and phone numbers. Those are good references to follow up on. But most of the time, people don't give good information on references, and good reference information is hard to get. So, but those are all the things that you can ask. So I'm going to kind of wind down here because 2 weeks from today, and you can see why this webinar takes so long because we haven't even gotten to the actual interview process. But I find that this is maybe one of the bigger mistakes or bigger wastes of company money is that interviewing is just not being done to get the right people that are out there. So let me point out that we will be on schedule for 3 o'clock Wednesday, November 16th, the sequel and the final of Interviewing for Superstars. And so we'll talk about questions you can use for sales associates and separate ones for management candidates because there's some overlap, but there's some differences. And creating the best interview environment to uncover the real person. We're going to go into more of that stuff that we just touched on today. Talk about flashpoints. When to buy, when to pass. There's things that over the years I felt like I had this giant trapdoor lever. Somebody hit on a particular note that told me this is never going to work. It's like I wanted to reach to that lever and flush them into eternity, but of course I couldn't do that. That wouldn't be the proper Christian thing to do. But there are flashpoints. You get to that point and you just say, I don't want to waste anybody's time anymore, and you want to try to get out of that interview when you can. And then, of course, I want to show you how to be professional in your offers of employment, because for a lot of these people that you're interviewing and you're going to hire, they've probably never had an employment offer or an offer letter. It's very impressive when they get it. And it's very simple. And I'm going to show you an example of an offer letter. So that's, again, 2 weeks from now. And then lastly, just because this came up recently, you have to make sure that they're filling out an I-9, which is an immigration form that shows that they have the legal right to work in this country. There's been a couple folks lately, clients that were not having employees hand out or sign I-9s. Ooh, you don't want to have that. The Department of Labor now, that's my Goldens are telling me to get off the phone. Department of Labor now for that kind of thing falls under Homeland Security. And believe me, you don't want to go get a file of Homeland Security. So if you guys can hold for just a second here, let me get the dogs to stop eating me. Yes, nothing like having 170 pounds of golden retriever when some poor soul walks by the house. Okay, one thing I want to mention to you before we get out is to not miss out if you're not a Vault member. Being a Vault member and getting all of this content, more than 60 webinars, and I don't know how many. I've written 5 books. Everything is in the Vault. It's $39.95 a month, or it's the cost of let's see, at $8 an hour, it'd be 5 hours of a part-time employee. So it's cheap, and there's a lot of just tremendous great stuff in there. And there's stuff that we do that is exclusive to the Vault. I also want to talk about Sunbiz Weekly, which is one of the companies under my umbrella of the Power Group. Sunbiz Weekly, we are now, I think this last week we hit nearly 12,000 unique viewers come to sunbizweekly.com. We are the only digital magazine in this industry. We don't have to kill trees and send out paper trade magazines, and we change our content and news stories every single week. We have probably the best editorial content editor in the business, and John Ribner, and our ladies that do the graphics and do the email and the website maintenance are two of the very best. So we're very, very proud of our staff. And so you get a chance, give them go to, on the Vault is johnrfarr.com and sunbizweekly.com, information you need and want to stay profitably. So let's see what we've got, if we got some questions. And let me just expand this here so I can see what's going on. And let's see what we have here. Okay. Molly is asking, how do you determine whether someone has a fast learning curve? Now that's a great question, Molly. I wish we could go inside the brains of somebody, but what you can do during your interview is ask them about some of the individual tasks and duties that they had to learn at their prior jobs. You can ask them what the typical training period was for that, how long it took them to get through that. It becomes kind of a gut thing, Molly. I guess when you do enough interviews, you can kind of pick up on who picks up on things faster than others. Now, not all employees are created the same, so you'll get some people that will pick up, say, on the POS system fast, but maybe not pick up so fast on how to sell an EFT or a lotion, or vice versa. We've got somebody at one of the chains right now that is very good at selling EFTs, but not real good at working on a computer, which sometimes surprises me because this is a millennial generation person. I always assume that those people were born with computers, in their crib. So, but a lot of it, I think, is just doing enough interviews. You start to get a handle on whether this person, has got a quick learning curve. Sometimes, Molly, you don't know until after you've worked with them for a while. But if they have good interpersonal skills, and this is the thing, Molly, if they've got good interpersonal skills, I'll give them a lot of leeway in training, because if they've got a natural warmth with customers, boy, that's like super important. Another question that we've got here is the interviewing different for management candidates than it is for associates? And we're going to go over this a couple of weeks from today, because we've got questions. Different set of questions for associates, different set of questions for managers, as I think I mentioned earlier. And very true, the interview for a sales associate is a little lighter than it is for a person that we're thinking about being a manager. Obviously, we're going to be more challenging of a person that's going to be a manager. We're going to challenge with a manager what it is that they have done, not what they would do, but what have they done with an employee, say, that was not, say, have as fast a learning curve as Molly has said, is how did you take that person and train them differently? So we're a little bit more challenging when we're doing an interview of a management candidate than we are for a sales associate person. Natalie has asked for pictures of the woofs, and yes, I do have pictures of the woofs. I don't want to get out of the screen right now, but I promise that what I'll do in the follow-up to this, when we send the follow-up email out, I will send a picture of Bailey and Cassie. They're absolutely gorgeous woofs. Cassie has to, poor Cassie has to have some surgery tomorrow. She's got a bad tooth they got to take out, and I'm already nervous about it because they're our babies. So, but anyway, Natalie, we'll put pictures in there in the follow-up. And Kate says, I don't know if it's Kate or that's short for Caitlin, what does PSA measure? Okay. Per sale average, which is just a term that we've kicked around in the business for a long time. It means you take the total revenues the employee has rang up and you divide it by the number of visits or TANs that they handled. And that gives you their per sale, or let's call it per visit average. I almost think that it should be, well, with some software, some POS software, it's PTA, or per TAN average. PSA, I think, is Sunlink, and then I think for Helios, it's PPSA, per person sale average, whatever. I mean, it all means the same thing. It's taking their total revenues and dividing it by their transactions. And if you don't do it, well, if you have a computer software, it should do it for you. But it's pretty simple to do. Just go by the individual, take their transactions, divide it into their revenues, and compare them against each other and rank them. It works real well at getting people to pay more attention to selling more lotions. Okay, and I think it's Caitlin that's also saying, I know we're not supposed to ask age, but age requirement is 18 to operate. Oh, it's Randy. I'm sorry, Randy. Randy is saying, I know we're not supposed to ask age, but age requirement is 18 to operate units in salon. What is your approach to make sure they're 18 per state law? Randy, excellent question, and you're absolutely right. Typically, we're not supposed to ask age, but in this case, that is an exception. We can ask them to produce a driver's license to show that they're, in fact, old enough to run a tanning bed. Now, this is going to sound a little crazy, but if you want to avoid any kind of criticism about asking about age, you could ask everybody, and you probably should anyway, to produce their driver's license. As a matter of fact, when you fill out their I-9 form, driver's license is typically one of the two most popular supplied pieces of evidence that they are eligible to work in the United States. So you get their Social Security card and the driver's license, and you got it made. And as a matter of fact, Randy, if you want to approach it that way, just say for an I-9 or for work verification, we have to see your Social Security and we have to see your driver's license. Now, of course, if they have a passport, that supersedes everything. But that's another story. But you're absolutely right, Randy. You've got to ask that because it's not in every state, but I think it's in most states that you have to be 18. And here's a couple more questions, then we're going to move on. Here's another one from Randy. These millennials look older sometimes than what they are, laughing. Yeah, they do. Sometimes they do fool you. And I know that people are tempted to hire a 16 or 17-year-old as a bed cleaner, and because they can get them cheaper, and they think, well, if I have to, I can have them run a turn on a tanning bed and kind of cheat on the law. I just wouldn't do that. And the only time you really need bed cleaners, I think, is if you have a big salon during the peak season and things are going crazy and you want to keep people at the counter. Okay, so I'm going to take one last question here, and this is by Leslie, and Leslie is asking, typically, what do you have to pay a MIT candidate? Well, Leslie, that depends on where you are in the country. If you're looking at starting wages for a management candidate or an MIT in Los Angeles or Seattle or San Francisco or Boston, it's considerably different than it is in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So it would depend so much on what the competition out there, not just tanning, but other indulgence. If you go to a Massage Envy, which is a big chain, you go to a Massage Envy in Hebron, Kentucky, what they're paying there for an MIT candidate and what they're paying for that same job in West Hollywood, it could be considerably different. It could be 50% different, just because the pay rates of the labor pool are so different. Lately, the MITs that we've hired, we're looking at starting them normally about $13 an hour, plus they still get their lotions and EFT. Again, but we don't hire somebody as an MIT just to be an MIT. We hire them with the intent that within a month or two, they're going to be managing a store or they're going to step up. If somebody's an MIT a year later, you've hired the wrong person. They shouldn't still be in training. And I think that's what we've only got time for today, guys, because it's a quarter after. So I hope that you'll join us 2 weeks from today, again at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We're going to get into more goodies as far as some of the details of questions. But before I let you go, I do want to ask you if you would. There is a poll that we do, and if you will, after we get done here, if you will please respond to that poll. We do like to hear what your critique is of this webinar, good, bad, or indifferent. And again, I would strongly urge you to go to sunbizweekly.com, and if you want to contact me, look down below. You'll see John at johnrfarr.com. And yes, I will send out a follow-up email talking about the next webinar, and the pictures of the woofs will be in there. So thank you all for joining me today, and I hope that you have a good rest of your day and a good week, and you get prepared for the peak season. Bye-bye now.